post-apocalyptic future for a story is nothing new. I'm sure right now, after hearing that, you can think of at least 3 films or shows or books that focus on the aftermath of Armageddon. And of course, the story can vary between creative minds. Many of them go towards the survival of humanity. Okay, a lot of them. Like, a lot. And throughout them all, different stories have added new elements to the focus and incorporate more outside of what many of us have become accustomed to, provided you've been exposed to these stories. And one of those stories I want to focus on is Heartgear. Now, to put this out there, it's not finished, and I don't think it's anywhere near finished, so what I say here may end up being incredibly dated depending on how the series plays out. The creator, Tsuyoshi Takaki, has made a number of different manga. The thing is, most of them are one-shots, and one of his artworks, Black Torch, being more intended for a long-running series, got discontinued. So, keep that in mind that this series might very well end up being dropped, or if it goes on, it might not live up to how I talk about it here. I don't really like doing vids like this, cause I want to wait till it's finished to discuss it in full, but all that in mind, I do think there's quite a bit to discuss with what it already has done. Heartgear is set 200 years after the nuclear fallout from World War III. Humanity has perished and cities have been left to ruin, with the only form of sentient life left in existence are artificial intelligence droids, simply referred to as gears. One of which called Zet, who takes care of a young girl named Rue, who seems to be the last human alive on Earth. Upon her usual exploration, she stumbled across a desolate facility and accidentally activated an experimental gear named Chrome. Not sure of what to do, she brings him back to Zet, who, upon realizing he lacks a base program, which is to gears as his soul is to humans, allows him to stay with them to help him understand more about himself. As time goes on, Chrome learns more about Rue, and in turn more about himself, or rather, a lack of compensation and understanding towards a human. Things stay like this until one day, an insane gear approaches Rue and Zet, fully intending to kill. Zet holds him off while Rue escapes, however, at the cost of himself. Upon seeing Zet's disembodied head to the floor, and put in a position where the insane gear is aiming to kill Rue, Chrome, unable to keep up with everything that just happened, asks himself, what do I want to do? He considers prioritizing saving Rue, but also isn't aware of how to. He doesn't consider himself capable of going against the insane gear. Unable to think clearly and faced with the realization that wasting any more time will result in her getting shot, Chrome in that very moment moves to save her, getting shot in the process. Everything seems bleak, and all Rue can do is look in shock and awe at the motionless body of Chrome that risked his life to protect her. But then... Chrome seems to be alive, now sporting a body more humanoid-like and carrying a desire to protect Rue, no matter what happens, wanting to make that his base program. The insane gear attacks with his back turned, but Chrome blocks it, stating that he cannot act on anything without her approval, as while a base program is to a robot what a soul is to a human, it is ultimately a human that needs to acknowledge it for them to see it through. Rue agrees, and within the next few pages from then on, Chrome decimates the insane gear until it ceases to function. Once the battle dies down, Rue discusses the memories she's had with Zet, the gear that was a father to her, and upon seeing him as he is, she breaks down in tears. Chrome picks up Zet's head and pulls out the core unit, still intact despite his condition. He notes that if they find a compatible body, Zet could be brought back, and from here, the two of them decide to set out in search. The rest of this manga focuses on exploring the world as is, from the desolation to the mundanity, from the everyday occurrences to the newfound problems. This is what I'd say is the series' biggest strength, is its world building. What's interesting is the diverse cast of AI throughout this world. In most popular media focused on a post-apocalyptic sci-fi world, that which is inhuman is usually viewed as the enemy. It's not just Western films, anime has done this too. Seraph of the End, High School of the Dead, Gurren Lagann, the list goes on. But what's interesting is that this explores the concept of a world populated by AI after Armageddon in a way that's a bit of a rarity in the genre, that being complexity. It's not just a matter of a human being the lone survivor in a world filled with gears, but also said gears having emotions and thoughts towards subjects such as time. One of my favorite chapters is Needle of a Clock, and whether or not this series is still good down the line, this chapter alone is good enough to be its own short film, if done right. Along their journey, they come across a barber who gives Rue a haircut, believing that she's another gear. All the while, he tells the story of the salon, being a place where both gears and humans frequent, saying that while it was busy, it was also fun. He then talks about a mom who brought her daughter in for a haircut. At first it was with her, then the daughter started coming by herself as she grew older. By high school, she started getting perms and having her hair dyed. Being in college, getting a job, getting engaged, regardless of the time or circumstance, he'd always be requested to see her hair. And finally, the daughter that went from a timid child to a mature adult became a mother herself, and brought her own daughter for a haircut. To quote the manga, "The feeling of that moment was indescribable." Now as for a different story, a lady geared owned by a picky man who was prone to change his mind often, bringing her in with detailed orders for the barber. One day, however, that same man brought in a newer model gear, never bringing in the previous one. These 2 pages alone have a lot to take in, but the next page really gives the story he's telling a lot more weight to it, as he concludes the story saying, "I think maybe it was all that constant change that enabled us to feel the passage of time. And if we're speaking in that sense, this world now might be like a clock that has lost its gears." And while this whole chapter pretty much was entirely pointless as they learned nothing new about their objective or which way to go next, and they were pretty much just humoring this guy, unnecessary to the plot though it may be, it's the story itself in this chapter that's interesting to read. It's like taking a trip across a country and making a stop for an hour, and in that hour, meeting someone who takes care of stray cats and kittens, who then has a pretty bittersweet story about stray cats and what drove them to taking them in. The story and the person have nothing to do with where you're going, but it's that detour along the destination that makes the journey all the more memorable. Shortly before taking off, the barber tells Rue to come in again once her hair grows out, to which she gladly says she'll come back, only later realizing that he knew she was human. That type of storytelling, the stories that are basically closed off from the bulk of everything and take its time with what it wants to do, like done right, which I do think is done here, it can be very investing. On top of that, having characters with complexities and thoughts, engaging stories, and exploring a world with the notion of reassurance that not everything is your enemy is a thought-provoking inclusion, especially for AI. There's this conceived idea that a lot of people have about how if artificial intelligence becomes autonomous, it'll desire to kill humanity, but when the AI instead starts expressing their own thoughts and opinions on the world and their experiences, the idea becomes more and more ludicrous. Currently the manga is going somewhere interesting. It not too long ago had a hiatus, but it's been pretty interesting seeing it unfold. Again, I have no idea if this will be something that'll dip down the line, or if this will just get better and better, or if this gets discontinued, but I can say that at least for now, Heart Gear is an enjoyably bittersweet ride. From the desolate, ruined world, to the colorful characters, to the questions around life and death, I can at least say it was one hell of a journey.